Hey everyone, good day to all of you, and hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time today to talk about AR dust covers, and I wanted to give some just general thoughts and recommendations that can be good to think about when you're looking at picking up a new one. And I did also just want to give a little bit of a somewhat short review of all these different ones that I have tried. As you can see, I have quite a few different ones on here, and just a Magpul one as well over there to the side. So first though, I did want to start, I think it'd be best to talk about the generalities because of course I haven't tried every single dust cover on the market. There is just such a gigantic amount, it would be impossible and honestly just kind of a waste of time to try all of them because a lot of them share a few features. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a dust cover. So starting with a very basic point being the material, I personally do quite like the polymer dust covers over the traditional metal type. There are some fancier ones as well, like titanium and other weird ones like that, but the reason I do prefer the polymer ones is mostly because they don't have memory. So similar to what you probably have heard about, for example, when you're comparing polymer mags versus steel magazines, the issue with a lot of steel mags is when they're dropped over and over that they have a memory. And what that means, of course, is just that a dent in them will stay in there. Unlike with polymer, generally it'll retain its shape, which is great for a dust cover because then it retains a much better seal. Now granted, a dust cover isn't under that much force, and so it's not that likely to deform, but still, it occasionally will get bumped up on stuff, so that is a big reason why I prefer the polymer. And on some polymer dust covers, they actually have a really, really good seal because they'll actually put in an internal gasket. For example, I'm not sure if they still do it, but I know for a time that Daniel Defense's polymer dust covers, that they were internally putting a gasket, which really helped to seal up the system and keep dust out of it. Another advantage of the polymer dust covers, of course, is that they don't corrode, which of course the metal ones would. Now, not that big of an issue personally, just kind of depends on where you're at. In my case, I'm in a really generally pretty dry environment, so I've never ran into much of an issue with corrosion on dust covers myself. But it is just kind of nice to have that, especially if I am out in the rain for a little while. It's less to worry about. And at least compared to the original metal mil-spec dust covers, a polymer dust cover will be just ever so slightly lighter, but it's so negligible I don't really think it matters. And of course, you do have even lighter ones out there, like those really high-end titanium ones, for instance. And I suppose I should mention that if you are switching out a dust cover, that the mil-spec ones, they can be a little tricky to get off, but generally all of these are a fair bit more simple to install. HK ones are, there's a little bit of a trick to them, but they're still pretty easy, I would say. So I know as far as ease of installation, a lot of people bring up the Magpul dust covers, which I have right here. And the way that this one works, the reason it is so simple is it pretty much works like a bolt action. You can see this little tab right down here, which if I flip this over, you can see that the way this would install is this is just an internally telescoping, pretty much this replaces your ejection port or dust cover rod, and it's just all one piece here. So you can see that you would just pop up this tab, and you can even just do it with your finger like I'm doing now, and just slide it up. Like I said, kind of like with a bolt action. Then you can just drop this into your ejection port right there, and then just release, and that would lock in place. Now the reason that I don't have this on any rifle, I wanted to use it on here, but I had a lot of trouble with this, and I actually did test this on other rifles too. I cannot get this thing to work. I'll overlay some footage right now from when I was testing it on this AR, and pretty much it seems like the issue was that the spring on here is just a little weak, a little sluggish, so this would always very, very consistently induce failures to eject. And I tried this on both this upper, which is pretty nicely gassed. It's sometimes a little touchy, but it's pleasant. Compared to on this is my SBR over here, a little bit more violent, but still not that bad a gas either. But on both of these, I did test this dust cover, and I just cannot get it to work. Now, I've had experience with a different Magpul dust cover as well in the past on a 416A5 clone that was sent to me, and it worked perfectly fine. But on the other hand, just, I have heard of other people having issues with these as well. So I'm not sure if they do just across the board use a kind of weaker spring, or if I just got one here that's an exceptionally weak spring and it's just a lemon. But it is something to keep in mind. These do seem to be a little bit on the weaker side. So my personal favorite for ease of installation, as well as kind of nice features of a polymer dust cover is actually this one right here. This is the Strike Industries. So there's a lot of advertised features on this. Some of them I feel like don't really matter as much, but they're still kind of nice. For example, you have these little rubber pads, which they don't come on here. They ship with it, and you can just install them wherever you want. And that's nice. It just makes it quieter when it opens, you can see. But the main things I like, you can see you do have this kind of little gasket here, which, as I said earlier, like on the Daniel Defense ones, that really does help to seal it and prevent sand or dirt, whatever, from getting into the action. The way that this installs, though, I think is quite nice. So it is a little bit, just ever so slightly more tricky than the Magpul, but really not by much. So what you have right here, so you can see that little cutout. So you can't do this with your hand as you could with a Magpul, but what you do is you can just take a little pin right here, just push that. It's a little hard to see without the shadows kind of interfering, but I just take a pin and you can just kind of push this. Again, this is an internally telescoping rod design, so very easy to do. The only other additional feature you do need to keep in mind on this dust cover, of course, is you do need to kind of hold this spring towards the opposite side. You can see, of course, that little leg right there of the spring does need to sit towards the inside here, otherwise it won't open correctly. As far as the spring strength, I haven't found any issues with this on any of my uppers. I do have, or I should say, I've tried a few of these. This is the only one I personally have, but I do have experience with other ones of these same dust cover, and I've never had an issue. They're always pretty solid. One part that can be a little annoying, I think, though, again, maybe it's a kind of decent feature, is this right here, the detent that locks it in place. They do have a little adjustment. If you can kind of see, you just use a tiny, like a jewelry slotted screwdriver right there, and then you can adjust how tight or loosely this sits on your upper. The other one that I tried was a little bit on the overly tight side and wasn't really wanting to loosen up properly, but it still fit. But I don't know, I feel like this is a little bit of a gimmick personally and is a little just over-engineered, but if it's something you need, if you have maybe an out-of-spec ejection port, then sure, that could definitely help. Otherwise, I just tend to leave this alone unless I absolutely need to adjust it, but generally it should work fine just out of the box on pretty much any upper. I did also want to talk a little bit about the UTG polymer dust cover, to kind of draw some comparisons that not all polymer dust covers are made equal. So the only reason I really have this one is because this was my first AR build and I didn't have the proper tooling at the time, so or really the experience either. So I didn't know how to install the dust cover, didn't really want to deal with it. So this is just the one that came with the upper. That's it. That's really the reason why it's on there. And it works really fine for the most part. It doesn't have the super best seal. You can also see if I pop this open here, it doesn't have that gasket like I was mentioning. A fair bit of the polymer dust covers do have that, but of course not all of them. And the way that this one installs is another thing I wanted to mention. This one's actually kind of awkward. So again, the best way I found to install these is to take a little pin and again, internally telescoping, but you can see there's no little cutout or anything like that to access that. So you kind of have to just push it, and hopefully your upper does have a way to get at it. This one is a little awkward, kind of annoying, depending on your setup. It works okay, I would say. Overall, it's decent. The spring is nice. I haven't had any issues with this inducing failures. And then I did want to talk about the HK one as well. There's not a whole lot to mention here. It's pretty similar to just your regular mil-spec dust cover, except it's polymer instead. One, I guess, somewhat interesting feature that you might want to think about if you do want to pick these up yourself. Usually I just see people pick them up for a clone or inspired build, which is what this one is, just G95K inspired. And I do think RAL is cool as well, but as far as the features, you know, it's a very simple, just standard. You can see no gasket or anything like that. It still seals up relatively well, but I'm really quite partial to that Strike Industries one. But this one just uses a full, solid rod. You can see right here, it is actually proprietary to this dust cover, so you do need to get the right one. You can't just reuse a mil-spec one, but it does actually lock in. You can see right here with this little roll pin. So if you want one that absolutely will not come out until you really want it to, by just punching that out, which might look kind of awkward because it's so small, but it's really easy. It's not too tight in there or anything like that. So pretty straightforward to install as well. Overall, as you can probably tell from what I've already been saying, I am quite partial to these Strike Industries ones. Do really like a lot of the features that they have on them. I feel like Strike Industries as a brand is kind of hit or miss, but at least this dust cover, I didn't really look too much into their other dust cover design, so I'm not sure if they are all this nice, but I do really like, as I said, the gasket in particular, very well thought out. The detent, a little over engineered, but it's fine, and these little rubber silencers are just a little nice thought. They don't really move around. These are just adhesive, but they've stayed on there pretty well so far. Last thing I did want to say is if you are considering a polymer dust cover, the only downside really is they don't fit on all uppers. So in the case of this one, if you look, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a different sheen, a bit more glossy right here. So the reason for that, I did a different video on kind of going much more into detail on this, but basically this is a billet upper receiver, and it would not fit this polymer one. It was actually just perfectly contoured to be a very close fit with the rod of a regular mil-spec dust cover. So of course on a polymer dust cover you're going to just need a little bit more material to make up for the difference in strength compared to a metal one. So obviously you do need a little bit more of a gap here. Never been an issue on any mil-spec, just regular forged upper that I've ran across, but on a lot of these billet uppers you will probably, well, you just kind of want to check this area down here. If they have it kind of scoop inwards, you should be fine. It should accommodate any type of dust cover that you want. But if it's just flat across, which this one was originally, there's a very good chance, especially if it comes with just a regular dust cover, that it probably will not accommodate a lot of these aftermarket polymer ones. So something to keep in mind and remember there. It's fairly easy to identify, and if you really want to go through the work, of course, it's not that hard. I just kind of bubbled it myself, which only thing that really bothers me now is that this isn't the exact same glossiness, but other than that, you can't really tell that I made a cut under here to accommodate this. So that would be the only thing I'd say to look out for if you are considering a polymer dust cover, is just if it would fit if you have one of those aftermarket uppers. If so, it's not that big of an issue, really. This was just kind of a fun video just to talk about some nuances with the dust covers. I wouldn't worry about it too terribly much, even if you just have a regular dust cover. It'll still keep out the vast majority of just dirt and debris out of your system, which is great. That's what you want. I do think that, of course, this is just ever so slightly better, but definitely not like a huge sticking point either way. So hopefully this video was helpful if you are looking into just kind of some different dust covers. Otherwise, hopefully it was at the least just kind of informative and interesting. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments below. Also, as I said at the start, there are so many dust covers out there. If you have experience with any that are kind of interesting and do some weird or unique stuff too, I would love to hear about it. I always do read the comments. Don't always have time to get back to every single one of them, but I do read them all and I do enjoy reading them. So look forward to those, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.